Charles Lucky Luciano, born in Sicily in 1897, is often called the architect of modern organized crime in America. When he moved to the United States as a child, he settled with his family in New York's Lower East Side, an area filled with immigrant poverty and gang activity. Luciano quickly adapted to this environment, joining local street gangs and learning how power, loyalty, and violence work together in the criminal underworld. By the 1920s, he became deeply involved in bootlegging during the Prohibition era, supplying illegal alcohol and earning vast sums of money. Luciano was clever, strategic, and more forward-thinking than the older mafia bosses of his time. He believed that constant violence between gangs was bad for business. So in 1931, after orchestrating the end of the bloody Castellamarese War between rival mob factions, he helped form the Commission. This governing body brought together the leaders of major crime families across the country to resolve disputes and share profits without unnecessary killings. Luciano was also smart about protecting himself legally. He rarely handled violent crimes directly and surrounded himself with trusted lieutenants who did the dirty work. He diversified his business into gambling, narcotics, and prostitution, making it difficult for police to link him personally to specific crimes. Despite his involvement in numerous killings, Luciano managed to stay out of prison for years. His luck changed in 1936 when Special Prosecutor Thomas Dewey targeted his prostitution operations. Luciano was finally convicted on charges of compulsory prostitution and sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. However, even behind bars, he maintained influence. During World War II, Luciano allegedly assisted U.S. naval intelligence in securing New York's docks from potential sabotage, and as a result, his sentence was reduced. In 1946, he was released and deported to Italy, where he lived freely until his death in 1962. Alphonse Al Capone was born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1899 to Italian immigrant parents. As a young man, he joined the 5 Points gang and learned the art of street crime under mentors like Johnny Torrio. When Torrio moved to Chicago, Capone followed, quickly rising through the ranks of the city's criminal network. During Prohibition, Capone built an empire based on bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution. By 1925, he had taken control of the Chicago Outfit, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country. He made millions of dollars in profits each year and earned a reputation as both ruthless and charismatic. To the public, Capone was a man of style who gave to charity and fed the poor, but behind the scenes, he was responsible for numerous killings and gang wars. The most infamous event tied to him was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre of 1929, where 7 members of a rival gang were lined up and shot by men dressed as police officers. Although many believed Capone ordered the attack, the police could never prove it. He had layers of protection, from bribed law enforcement to corrupted judges and politicians. Witnesses either disappeared or were too afraid to testify against him. Capone's downfall came not from killing or racketeering charges, but from something much simpler: tax evasion. Federal agents, unable to connect him to violent crimes, used his extravagant lifestyle as evidence that he was not reporting his true income. In 1931, he was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison. He served time in Alcatraz, where his health declined due to untreated syphilis. He was released in 1939 and spent his final years quietly in Florida until his death in 1947. Meyer Lansky, born in 1902 in what is now Belarus, was one of the most intelligent and strategic minds in organized crime. He moved to New York as a child and grew up in the same neighborhood as Lucky Luciano and Bugsy Siegel, forming lifelong partners that shaped the American Mafia. While Luciano organized the structure of the Mafia, Lansky was the brains behind its financial operations. Known as the mob's accountant, he handled the syndicate's money, investments, and international connections. During Prohibition, Lansky made huge profits from bootlegging, and later he expanded it to gambling operations in Florida, Cuba, and Las Vegas. Lansky was different from other mobsters. He avoided flashy displays of wealth and rarely involved himself in direct violence. His calm personality and mathematical genius made him invaluable. He helped develop offshore banking systems, allowing the mafia to hide money overseas and launder profits through legitimate businesses. His influence reached into hotels, casinos, and even early Las Vegas resorts. Law enforcement struggled for decades to convict him. Because he kept his operations legal on paper, prosecutors could not directly tie him to the crimes that funded his empire. He was careful about what he signed and avoided leaving paper trails. Despite multiple investigations and trials, he was never convicted of serious charges. In the 1970s, the US government tried to deport him to Israel, but he successfully fought the case. He lived his final years in Miami Beach, dying in 1983 without ever serving time for his most significant crimes. Now, before we continue, I have something that I need to tell you guys. When I was a kid, on the 4th of July of all days, I was hit by a car. Fireworks, barbecue, and then bam, a trip to the hospital. Thankfully I recovered, but for my parents it was a nightmare, especially because of the insurance companies and them having to deal with the mountain of medical bills. And that's the reality for so many other people as well. Traditional personal injury claims are designed to wear you down. Insurance companies drag their feet, offer you pennies to what you deserve, and hope you'll just give up. That's why I wish my parents had known about Morgan & Morgan. There's a reason history remembers those who fought for justice, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. And for over 35 years, they've been fighting for the people, not the insurance companies. Their results are insane. In Florida, one client was offered just $350,000, but Morgan & Morgan fought for them and got them over $12 million. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million, which was 40 times higher than what the insurer wanted to pay. That's because when you hire Morgan & Morgan, it's like hiring a legal army. They've got over 1,000 attorneys and 100 plus offices nationwide, and they've recovered over $25 billion for over 500,000 clients. And the best part, there are no upfront costs. Their fee is free unless they win. Submitting a claim is super easy. You can start in less than a minute with no endless appointments, overwhelming paperwork, or long waits. So if you're ever injured, don't settle for less and let the insurance companies win. You can just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get started with Morgan & Morgan today. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, born in Brooklyn in 1906, was one of the most ambitious and unpredictable figures in American organized crime. From a young age, Siegel was drawn to the fast life. He met Meyer Lansky as a teenager, and together they formed the Bugs and Meyer Mob, a feared gang involved in bootlegging, gambling, and contract killings during the 1920s and 30s. Siegel's reputation grew through his work with the National Crime Syndicate, where he helped organize operations across the United States. In the 1940s, he moved to California to expand the mob's influence on the West Coast. There, he became involved with Hollywood stars, producers, and businessmen, presenting himself as a charming and stylish entrepreneur. His biggest gamble came with the creation of the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. Siegel envisioned turning the Nevada desert into a glamorous destination filled with luxury casinos and entertainment. Funded by mafia money, the Flamingo was meant to be a masterpiece. But construction costs spiraled out of control, and the hotel opened unfinished, losing millions. Many of his criminal associates believed Siegel was stealing money from the project. Though he tried to fix the problems, his charm could not save him. On June 20th, 1947, he was shot and killed at his girlfriend's Beverly Hills home, most likely by the mob itself. No one was ever charged with his killing. Despite his violent end, Siegel's dream of Las Vegas as a center of gambling and entertainment became reality. Frank Costello was born in Calabria, Italy on January 26, 1891. His family immigrated to the United States when he was still a child, eventually settling in East Harlem, New York. The neighborhood was rough and full of street gangs, and Costello grew up surrounded by crime and poverty. As a young man, he joined a local gang and began running small-time operations that included theft, gambling, and bootlegging. During the Prohibition era, Costello's criminal career grew rapidly. He partnered with Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky, and together they built one of the most efficient and financially successful bootlegging networks in the country. Costello's focus on gambling, slot machines, and liquor distribution turned him into one of the wealthiest underworld figures of the 1920s and 30s. He stood out because of his business-like approach to crime. He preferred negotiation and influence over violence, which earned him the nickname the Prime Minister of the Underworld. Costello's most valuable skill was his ability to connect with politicians and public officials. He bribed judges, police officers, and even union leaders, ensuring protection for his operations. His influence extended into New York politics, giving him a reputation as a man who could get anything done quietly. In 1951, he faced public exposure during the Kefauver Committee hearings on organized crime. When asked questions about his income and business connections, Costello famously refused to answer, leading to a conviction for contempt of Congress. He later faced tax evasion charges in 1954, but served only a brief prison term. On May 2, 1957, an assassin shot Costello in the head, reportedly on orders from rival mobsters who wanted to take control of his power. Miraculously, he survived. After the attack, he withdrew from the violent side of organized crime and spent the rest of his life quietly managing his wealth. Frank Costello died of a heart attack on February 18, 1973. Dutch Schulz was born on August 6, 1901, in the Bronx, New York. From a young age, he turned to the streets for survival after his father abandoned the family. He left school early and joined local gangs that specialized in robbery and extortion. During the Prohibition era, Schulz entered the bootlegging business, which became the foundation of his empire. He operated breweries and smuggling routes across New York, quickly gaining wealth and power. When Prohibition ended in 1933, he shifted his focus to the numbers racket, an illegal lottery that became highly profitable in Harlem and the Bronx. Schulz was known for using extreme violence to maintain control over his territory, often resorting to intimidation, kidnapping, and killing. Schulz's success brought him into conflict with law enforcement and rival mobsters. His biggest challenge came from Special Prosecutor Thomas E. Dewey, who launched an aggressive campaign to shut down organized crime. Schulz was indicted for tax evasion and forced to stand trial in 1933. He was acquitted, but his threats to assassinate Dewey alarmed other crime bosses. They believed he was drawing too much attention to their operations and putting the entire syndicate at risk. In 1935, the National Mafia Commission voted that Schulz had become a liability. On October 23, 1935, he was shot inside the Palace Chop House in Newark, New Jersey, along with his bodyguards. The gunman, acting on orders from the commission, ended his reign violently. Albert Anastasia, born on September 26, 1902, in Calabria, Italy, became one of the most feared and powerful figures in American organized crime. He immigrated to the United States as a teenager and settled in Brooklyn, where he worked on the docks. It was here that his violent temper and physical strength drew the attention of local gangsters. In 1921, Anastasia was convicted of killing and sentenced to death, but the case mysteriously collapsed after key witnesses disappeared. This early experience taught him how easily fear and money could manipulate justice. He joined forces with Lucky Luciano and became a founding member of the National Crime Syndicate. Anastasia's most notorious role was as a co-founder and leader of Murder Incorporated, a secret enforcement unit that carried out contract killings for the syndicate. The group was believed to be responsible for hundreds of killings throughout the 1930s and 40s, many of which were never solved. Anastasia's influence also extended to the docks through the International Longshore Men's Association, giving him control over shipping and labor unions in New York City. Law enforcement tried several times to convict him. In 1955, he was charged with tax evasion, but served only a short prison sentence. Witnesses against him often disappeared or refused to testify, making it nearly impossible for prosecutors to build a solid case. By the mid-1950s, tensions grew within the mafia. Other prominent mobsters began plotting to remove Anastasia, who they believed had become unpredictable. On October 25, 1957, while sitting in a barber's chair at a hotel in Manhattan, Anastasia was ambushed and shot multiple times by two masked gunmen. His death shocked the public and ended one of the most violent reigns in mafia history. Sam Giancana was born in Chicago in 1908 to Sicilian immigrant parents. Growing up in a poor neighborhood on the city's west side, he quickly became familiar with street life and crime. As a teenager, he joined the 42 Gang, a local street gang that acted as a feeder group for the powerful Chicago outfit. Giancana's intelligence and fearlessness made him stand out, and it was not long before he caught the attention of senior mob leaders. By the 1930s, Giancana had worked his way into the Chicago outfit's inner circle. The outfit controlled gambling, prostitution, and illegal liquor operations across the city. Giancana handled high-risk jobs that required both violence and organization. His loyalty to the outfit's leaders earned him their trust. Over time, Giancana became known not only for his ruthlessness, but also for his ability to manage political connections and expand the outfit's influence into legitimate businesses and government sectors. During the 1950s, he rose to power as one of the most influential mob bosses in America. Giancana managed national gambling interests and allegedly maintained political connections that reached the White House. There were widespread rumors that he helped influence the 1960 US presidential election by mobilizing Union votes in favor of John F. Kennedy. He also had alleged ties with the CIA in secret operations against Fidel Castro's Cuba, showing how deep his reach had become beyond organized crime. Despite being suspected of ordering killings and running illegal rackets worth millions, Giancana spent very little time behind bars. Authorities had difficulty linking him directly to criminal acts because he rarely handled operations personally. He used layers of trusted men who carried out his orders, ensuring that no one could connect crimes to him. In 1965, Giancana refused to testify before a grand jury and was jailed for contempt of court. After serving a short sentence, he fled to Mexico to avoid further prosecution. When he returned to the United States in 1974, he lived quietly in his Oak Park home. However, in June 1975, he was found shot to death in his basement while cooking dinner. No one was ever arrested for the killing. Joseph Bonanno was born in 1905 in Castellammare del Golfo, Sicily. His early life was shaped by Italy's turbulent political climate, which forced his family to seek safety abroad. He immigrated to the United States in the 1920s and settled in New York City, where organized crime among Italian immigrants was already established. By his mid-20s, Bonanno had become a major figure in the mafia underworld. At just 26, he became the head of the Castellammare's family after a bloody conflict that reshaped the mafia in New York. The 5 major crime families of New York were soon formed, and Bonanno's group took his name. His leadership style was calculated and quiet. Unlike flashier mobsters, Bonanno preferred to stay in the background, building an image of respectability while running criminal enterprises that included gambling, extortion, and drug trafficking. Bonanno was highly strategic. He invested in legitimate businesses such as bakeries, laundries, and funeral homes to conceal illicit profits. His control was built on loyalty and secrecy. Even as law enforcement targeted the mafia more aggressively in the 1950s and 60s, Bonanno managed to avoid major convictions. He was questioned after the infamous Appalachian meeting in 1957, where top mob leaders from around the country gathered, but most of the charges were dismissed on technical grounds. He denied the existence of any organized crime network, claiming that he was simply a businessman. This denial became part of his long-term defense strategy. He understood the value of plausible deniability and ensured that no criminal operations could be traced directly to him. In the 1960s, Bonanno's long rule was challenged by internal conflict, known as the Banana War. Rival factions within his family turned violent, forcing him to go into hiding for nearly 2 years. He eventually retired to Tucson, Arizona, where he lived quietly, away from the chaos of New York. Bonanno wrote an autobiography titled A Man of Honor, portraying himself as a misunderstood entrepreneur rather than a crime boss. He died peacefully in 2002 at age 97, having spent his later years free of serious legal punishment. His ability to mix criminal enterprise with legitimate business, maintain silence, and keep law enforcement at a distance allowed him to escape justice for most of his life. Frank Lucas was born in 1930 in La Grange, North Carolina. and grew up in poverty. Seeking a better life, he moved to Harlem, New York, where he started out with small-time hustles and petty theft. Over time, he became a trusted associate of one of Harlem's most powerful crime figures in the mid-20th century. Eventually, Lucas decided to build his own empire. Lucas's major innovation was cutting out the middlemen in the heroin trade. During the Vietnam War, he claimed to have made direct deals with heroin producers in Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle. He allegedly smuggled drugs into the United States using military planes and coffins of deceased soldiers. By creating a direct supply chain, Lucas offered purer heroin at lower prices under the brand name Blue Magic. His operation made millions of dollars weekly and employed dozens of workers. He invested his profits in real estate, nightclubs, and legitimate businesses across the country, presenting himself as a successful entrepreneur. Lucas was known for blending charm and intimidation. He dressed elegantly, maintained relationships with influential people, and kept his operation organized like a business cooperation. This professionalism allowed him to stay ahead of law enforcement for years. Eventually, federal agents targeted him through Operation Blue Angel, a joint effort by the DEA and NYPD. In 1976, Lucas was convicted of drug trafficking and sentenced to 70 years in prison. However, he later cooperated with authorities, helping to expose corruption within the police and drug networks. In exchange, his sentence was reduced, and he was released in 1991. John Joseph Gotti Jr. was born on October 27, 1940, in the South Bronx, New York City. He grew up in a large Italian-American family that struggled financially, which led him into street life early. By his teenage years, Gotti was already involved in small-time crimes, such as theft and gambling. In the 1960s, he joined the Gambino crime family, one of the 5 most powerful mafia families in New York. His rise through the ranks came from a combination of fearlessness, ambition, and loyalty to higher-ups. By 1985, Gotti had grown impatient with the leadership of Paul Castellano, who was then the Gambino boss. Castellano's management style was unpopular with many members because he focused more on white-collar crimes and had forbidden drug dealing. Gotti secretly plotted Castellano's assassination. On December 16, 1985, Castellano and his underboss were shot dead outside a steakhouse in Manhattan. Gotti's men carried out the hit, and within days, he took over as boss of the Gambino family. Gotti's time as boss brought him fame beyond the underworld. He dressed in expensive suits, drove luxury cars, and held court in public places, often surrounded by his loyal crew. The media named him the Dapper Don for his polished appearance, and later the Teflon Don after he escaped multiple criminal charges. Prosecutors struggled to convict him because witnesses were intimidated, jurors were bribed or tampered with, and no direct evidence ever linked him to crimes. One of Gotti's key tactics was his ability to avoid being recorded giving direct orders. He relied on trusted lieutenants to communicate his decisions, which insulated him from legal risk. The Gambino family also used coded language during meetings to mislead law enforcement. Moreover, Gotti's influence reached deep into neighborhoods where silence was enforced by fear and loyalty. The FBI, frustrated by years of failed cases, shifted their focus. They planted hidden microphones in the Rave Night Social Club, Gotti's favorite meeting spot. These recordings captured him discussing crimes and giving instructions. In 1990, Gotti was arrested along with his underboss. To avoid a life sentence, his underboss cooperated with the FBI and testified against Gotti. In 1992, he was convicted of killing, racketeering, and other serious crimes. He received a life sentence without parole and died in prison on June 10, 2002. Griselda Blanco was born around February 15, 1943 in Colombia. Her childhood was shaped by poverty and violence, and by her early teens, she was already involved in petty crime. She moved to Medellin and became connected to the criminal underworld. By the 1970s, she had found her way into the cocaine trade, which was becoming a booming business across the Americas. Blanco's intelligence, ruthlessness, and fearlessness made her a powerful figure in a male-dominated world of drug trafficking. When she migrated to the United States, she based her operations in Miami. The city became a key hub for cocaine smuggling from Colombia, and Blanco played a major role in building that pipeline. Her empire was estimated to have earned millions of dollars every month. She was known as the cocaine godmother because of her dominance in the trade and the terror she inspired. Blanco did not hesitate to order assassinations, to settle disputes or remove threats, even involving her own family members in violence. She was one of the first traffickers to develop innovative smuggling techniques. Blanco used women's underwear lined with hidden compartments to transport cocaine undetected through airports. She also organized elaborate networks that kept her insulated from direct participation in crimes. This structure made it hard for law enforcement to connect her personally to the killings or the shipments she controlled. Her control over Miami's drug trade came at a time when the city was filled with drug wars, and she was suspected of ordering hundreds of killings. However, she managed to evade major charges for years because of limited evidence and widespread corruption in the system. Blanco's fall began in 1985 when she was arrested by federal agents and convicted of drug trafficking. She served a lengthy prison sentence and later faced additional killing charges. In 2004, she was released from prison and deported to Colombia. Despite her notoriety, she lived quietly for several years before being killed in 2012 by two gunmen riding a motorcycle. The method of her death mirrored the same type of drive-by assassination that she had once popularized. Semyon Mogilevich was born on June 30th, 1946, in Kiev, which was part of the Soviet Union. He later became known as one of the most powerful figures in organized crime, often called the Brainy Don because of his deep understanding of economics and international business. Unlike most gangsters who relied on violence, Mogilevich built a global empire through white-collar crimes such as fraud, money laundering, and arms dealing. His rise began in the 1970s and 80s, when he took advantage of the chaos that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union. Many people were immigrating to the West, and Mogilevich saw an opportunity. He scammed Russian immigrants by promising to help them move their money abroad safely, but instead stole their savings. Using those funds, he created a network of shell companies and banks across Europe. Mogilevich's influence expanded as he invested in industries that served as fronts for criminal activity, including art dealing, energy, and construction. His operations were structured like multinational corporations, making it nearly impossible for authorities to trace money directly to him. The FBI has described his organization as one of the most complex criminal enterprises in the world. In the 1990s, he became involved in a massive stock fraud through a Pennsylvania-based company called YBM Magnex International. The company appeared legitimate, but behind the scenes, it was used to launder money and defraud investors of over $150 million. When US investigators uncovered the scheme, Mogilevich fled the country. One of the main reasons he has remained free is his residence in Russia. He is believed to have strong political connections that provide him protection. Russia does not extradite its citizens to face trial in the United States, which makes prosecution nearly impossible. Mogilevich remains wanted by the FBI for racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. A $5 million reward is offered for information leading to his arrest. Pablo Escobar was born in 1949 in Colombia and rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most powerful and feared drug lords in history. He was the founder of the Medellin cartel, a criminal empire that dominated the cocaine trade during the 1980s. At the height of his power, Escobar controlled an estimated 80% of the world's cocaine market, earning billions of dollars each year and becoming one of the richest men alive. Escobar built his empire on a mix of business strategy, violence, and influence. He created a vast network of production sites, transport routes, and distribution systems that moved cocaine from Colombia to the United States and Europe. To protect his operations, he relied heavily on bribery and intimidation. His philosophy was simple: officials would either accept his money or face assassination. Many politicians, police officers, and judges were either paid off or killed if they opposed him. Despite his brutality, Escobar tried to portray himself as a man of the people. He funded housing projects, sports fields, and schools in poor neighborhoods, earning him the nickname the Robin Hood of Medellin. To many of the city's poor residents, he was a benefactor rather than a criminal. The public support helped him avoid capture for many years, as some citizens refused to cooperate with the authorities. However, Escobar's empire brought unimaginable violence to Colombia. His cartel carried out bombings, assassinations, and massacres, targeting anyone who stood in his way. In 1989, he was linked to the bombing of Avianca Flight 203, which killed over 100 people, and the assassination of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán. His war against the Colombian government and rival cartels left thousands dead. By the early 1990s, Escobar's influence began to crumble. The United States increased cooperation with Colombia, and both countries launched joint operations to bring him down. After escaping from his luxurious private prison in 1992, he went on the run. On December 2, 1993, authorities finally located him in Medellin. During the attempted arrest, Escobar was shot and killed on a rooftop. Joaquin Guzman, widely known as El Chapo, was the leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world. Born in 1957 in La Tuna, Mexico, he started as a low-level smuggler before rising to become one of the most notorious figures in organized crime. Under his leadership, the Sinaloa cartel became a global operation that trafficked cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and marijuana to the United States and beyond. El Chapo earned his nickname, which means shorty, due to his small stature, but his influence was massive. His success came from his ability to combine brutal enforcement with innovative smuggling methods. The Sinaloa cartel built a network of tunnels, secret compartments, and air and sea routes to move drugs while avoiding law enforcement detection. El Chapo was known for his organizational skills, his use of bribery to control officials, and his ability to rebuild the cartel even after setbacks. One of the most remarkable parts of his story was his ability to escape from prison. In 2001, he escaped a high-security Mexican prison with help from corrupt guards, hiding inside a laundry cart. After more than a decade on the run, he was captured in 2014, only to escape again in 2015 through a mile-long tunnel that led directly to his cell shower. These escapes embarrassed Mexican authorities and showed the depth of the cartel's power and resources. El Chapo was recaptured in 2016 after a violent shootout and extradited to the United States in 2017. His trial in New York revealed the vast reach of his empire, including evidence of billions in drug profits and countless killings ordered by his command. In 2019, he was convicted on multiple charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime, and sentenced to life imprisonment plus 30 years. El Chapo's downfall marked the end of an era for one of the world's most dangerous cartels, but it did not destroy the organization. The Sinaloa cartel remains active, now led by other figures, including El Chapo's sons. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on any of the gangsters I discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see a part 2 or more videos like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.